The rib rolled. That's what the old-timers call it when the wall gives way. Silas didn't hear the crack. He felt it vibrate through the soles of his boots and straight into his teeth. 1 second, he was showing the rookie how to read the sandstone top, and the next, the world was nothing but pressure and choking dust. He couldn't see his hand in front of his face, but he could hear the kid screaming. And in that terrifying, suffocating darkness, Silas Thorne realized that the mountain had finally come to collect the debt he'd been owing since 1978. Word count goal. 6,000+ words simulated. Story type. Type A. The struggle. Setting. Mingo County, West Virginia. The alarm clock didn't buzz. It clicked. A sharp, mechanical sound that cut through the silence of the pre-dawn hollow like a pickaxe striking slate. Silas Thorne was awake before it happened. He was always awake. After 40 years in the mines, your body forgets how to sleep past 3 in the morning. Your internal clock is set to the rhythm of the shift, not the sun. He sat up on the edge of the mattress. The springs groaned beneath him, a sound not unlike the shifting of the earth deep underground. His wife, Martha, stirred beside him. She was a warm shape under the heavy quilt, breathing deeply, lost in a dream he hoped was peaceful. He didn't touch her. His hands were rough, calloused like old leather, and permanently stained with the faint, gray map of coal dust that no amount of scrubbing could ever truly wash away. Silas stood up. His knees popped. His lower back sent a dull, familiar ache shooting up his spine. It was the miner's tax, paid daily in pain. He walked to the kitchen in the dark. He didn't need a light. He knew every creak of the floorboards in this company house. He knew where the linoleum was peeling near the refrigerator and where the table legs stuck out just enough to catch a toe. The coffee pot was already prepped. He pressed the button and listened to the gurgle of water heating up. Outside the window, Mingo County was pitch black. The mountains blocked out the stars, standing like silent sentinels around the small town of Blackwood Creek. Silas poured his cup. Black, bitter, hot enough to scald the throat. He took a sip and looked at his reflection in the darkened window. Gray hair, cut short, deep lines carved into his face, running from his nose to his chin like dried riverbeds. Eyes that had seen more darkness than light. He was 62 years old, and he had 6 months left until full pension. Just 6 months. He finished the coffee and grabbed his lunch bucket. It was a silver aluminum box, battered and dented, plastered with reflective stickers and safety slogans that had peeled over the years. Inside was a bologna sandwich, an apple, and a thermos of water. The same lunch for 4 decades. He put on his boots, steel-toed, laced tight. He grabbed his coat and stepped out onto the porch. The air outside was crisp and smelled of damp leaves and sulfur. It was October in West Virginia, the time of year when the hills turned to fire with the changing leaves, but down here in the bottom, it just felt cold. He climbed into his truck, a rusty Ford that rattled when it idled. The engine turned over with a cough, and Silas steered it onto the winding 2-lane road that led toward the mine portal. He wasn't alone on the road. Other headlights cut through the mist, a convoy of tired men heading to the same hole in the ground. They were like moths drawn to a black flame. The parking lot of the Blackwood Mine was gravel and mud. Silas parked in his usual spot, away from the younger guys with their lifted trucks and loud radios. He walked into the bathhouse, the dry, as they called it. The air here was humid and smelled of industrial soap and sweat. Rows of baskets hung from the ceiling on chains, holding the miners' street clothes. "Morning, see?" a voice called out. Silas looked over. It was Big Jim, a mechanic who had been working the belt lines since the 90s. "Morning, Jim," Silas grunted. He wasn't much for small talk before the sun came up. He stripped off his street clothes and pulled on his work gear. The heavy denim overalls, the reflective stripes, faded to gray. The flannel shirt, the thick socks. Then came the belt. It was heavy. The battery pack for his cap light. The self-rescuer, Unita stainless steel box that promised an hour of oxygen if the air turned to poison, and his tools. He walked to the lamp room and grabbed his light off the charging rack. He clicked it on. A bright beam cut through the steam of the bathhouse. It was working. "Hey, Mr. Thorne." The voice was young. Too young. Silas turned. It was the new kid. Caleb. He couldn't be more than 22. Clean face, eager eyes, gear that still looked stiff and new. He was the kind of kid who should have gone to college, or at least found a job welding or driving a truck. But the mines pay well, and in West Virginia, money talks louder than safety. "Caleb," Silas acknowledged, turning back to his locker. "They got me running the buggy with you today," Caleb said, stepping closer. Foreman said, "I'm hauling for your section." Silas sighed internally. A buggy runner. That meant Caleb would be driving the shuttle car, hauling the coal from the continuous miner machine that Silas operated back to the belt feeder. It was a rhythm job. You had to be fast, but not reckless. "You keep your head on a swivel, boy," Silas said, closing his locker with a clang. "Section 4 has been acting up. Top is heavy." "Yes, sir," Caleb said. "I'm ready." Silas looked at the boy. He saw the excitement. He remembered that feeling, the adrenaline of going underground, the pride of doing a man's work. But Silas also saw the danger. The mine didn't care about your excitement. The mine only cared about gravity. "Let's go," Silas said. They walked to the elevator. The cage. It was a rattling metal box that descended 600 feet into the earth. Men piled in. Shoulders rubbed against shoulders. The gate clanged shut. The descent was fast. Your stomach dropped into your boots. The light from the surface disappeared in an instant, replaced by the damp, cool air of the intake shaft. When the cage hit the bottom, the doors opened into a different world. It is a world of shadows and machinery. The ceiling, the top, was only 5 feet high here. You couldn't stand up straight. You walked with a stoop, a permanent bow of respect to the mountain above you. Silas led the way to the Mantrip, a low-riding rail car that would take them 3 miles back into the dark, to the working face. The ride was loud. The wheels shrieked against the tracks. The wind whipped past their faces, carrying the smell of rock dust. Pulverized limestone spread on the walls to prevent explosions. It tasted like chalk. Silas sat silently, his eyes closed. He was visualizing the section. He knew Section 4. They were mining under a creek bed today. That meant the rock above them might be fractured, water seeping in. It meant the roof bolts needed to be tight. He thought about the pension. 6 months. He thought about Martha. She wanted to go to Myrtle Beach when he retired. See the ocean. Silas had never seen the ocean. He'd spent his life under the earth, not looking at the horizon. The Mantrip slowed to a halt. They were at the end of the line. "All right, boys, let's get it," the foreman yelled. Silas climbed out. He grabbed his lunch bucket and walked toward the continuous miner. It was a massive beast of a machine, a dragon of steel with a rotating drum covered in carbide bits that chewed through the coal seam like it was butter. He climbed into the operator's cab, a tight cage on the side of the machine. He checked the remote box. Caleb climbed into his shuttle car behind him. Silas hit the start button. The motors roared to life. The hydraulic pumps wind. The noise was deafening. Even with earplugs, you felt it in your bones. Silas engaged the cutter head. The bits slammed into the face of the coal. Dust erupted. The water sprays kicked on, trying to knock the dust down. But it was always there, a black fog. He watched the coal fall onto the conveyor. He watched Caleb pull the buggy under the tail. Load. Fill. Gone. Caleb drove off to the feeder. Silas waited. This was the rhythm. Cut load. Wait. For 4 hours, it went smooth. The cold was soft. The top looked good. But mines are living things. They breathe. They shift. They wait. They wait. Around 11 a.m., Silas felt something. It wasn't a sound. It was a change in the air pressure, a sudden whump that popped his ears. He killed the cutter head immediately. Silence rushed back in, heavy and thick. What was that? Caleb's voice crackled over the radio. He was just pulling back in with the empty buggy. Hush, Silas hissed. He looked up at the roof. He shone his caplight on the sandstone. He saw a flake of rock peel off and fall. Just a small piece, but it was followed by a trickle of dust. "Bad top," Silas whispered. He reached for the tram lever to back the machine out. He wanted to get away from the face. "Back it up, Caleb," Silas yelled. "Back it up now." Caleb fumbled with his controls. "I'm trying. The cable is caught," Silas cursed. He jumped out of the miner cab. He had to help the kid. He ran toward the shuttle car, his boots slipping on the wet floor. "Leave the buggy!" Silas screamed. "Get out, Caleb!" Caleb looked at him, eyes wide, paralyzed by the sudden escalation. Then the mountain decided it was time. It didn't rumble. It is not. A sound like a cannon shot echoed through the tunnel. The floor heaved upward. The roof came down. Silas dove. He didn't think. He just dove toward the gap between the coal rib and the shuttle car. He grabbed Caleb by the collar and yanked him down. The world turned to violence. Rock, tons of it, slammed into the machinery. The air was instantly compressed, blowing out their lights, knocking the wind from their lungs. Silas curled into a ball, covering his head with his arms, shielding Caleb with his body. He felt a crushing weight on his legs. He felt the sharp bite of slate slicing his shoulder. Then the noise stopped. The dust was so thick, it was like inhaling wool. Silas coughed, a deep, racking spasms that tasted of sulfur and blood. He blinked. Darkness. Absolute, total darkness. The kind of darkness that you can feel pressing against your eyeballs. "Caleb!" Silas croaked. His voice sounded small, swallowed by the rubble. "Oh, I'm here," a voice whimpered from beneath him. "Mr. Thorne, I can't move." Silas tried to shift his weight. Pain exploded in his left leg. He gritted his teeth, forcing a groan back down his throat. He reached down and clicked his caplight. Nothing. The bulb was smashed. "Turn your light on, kid," Silas said. A moment of fumbling. Then a beam of light cut through the dust. It was dim, hazy, catching the swirling particles of coal in the air like a snowy blizzard. The view was a nightmare. The roof hadn't just fallen. It had collapsed completely behind them. The continuous miner was buried. The way out was a wall of jagged sandstone and twisted steel. They were in a pocket, maybe 10 feet long, 4 feet wide, created by the sturdy frame of the shuttle car, holding up a slab of the roof. "Oh, God," Caleb breathed. "Oh, God. Oh, God." "Calm down," Silas commanded. He tried to sound like the foreman, like the veteran. He was, but his heart was hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. "We're trapped," Caleb panicked. He started to scramble, kicking his legs. "Stop moving." Silas grabbed the boy's shoulder. "You use up the air, you die. You kick that support, you die. We are alive. That is what matters right now." Silas took a breath, trying to filter the dust through his nose. He assessed himself. His leg was pinned under a slab of slate. Not crushed, he hoped, but trapped tight. He couldn't pull it free. "Caleb, check your self-rescuer," Silas said. Caleb fumbled at his belt. It's dented." "Is the seal broken?" "I don't think so." "Good. Don't pop it yet." "The air is still good. If we smell smoke, or if you get a headache, we pop them. Understand?" "Yes, sir." Silas leaned his head back against the coal rib. The cold seeped into his neck. This was the weight. This was the part of mining no one talked about. The downtime between life and death. Up on the surface, Silas knew exactly what was happening. The sensors would have tripped. The power center would have knocked. The dispatcher would be calling on the radio, getting no answer. The siren would sound, that low, mournful wail that echoed through the valley. It would reach the houses in the hollow. Martha, she would be at the grocery store right now, or maybe folding laundry. She would hear the siren. Everyone in a coal town knows the siren. She would freeze. She would look at the clock. She would know it was midshift. Silas closed his eyes in the dark. He felt a tear leak out, hot and stinging against the coal dust on his cheek. "Mr. Thorne," Caleb whispered. "Yeah, son, are they gonna come for us?" "They're coming," Silas said firmly. "Mine rescue teams are the best in the world. You got guys up there right now throwing on their packs. They're looking at the maps. They're coming." "My leg hurts," Caleb said. "Pain is good," Silas lied. "Pain means the nerves are working. Means you're still whole. Time loses its meaning underground. There is no sun to mark the hours. Only the rhythmic dripping of water somewhere in the darkness. Drip, drip, drip." Silas drifted. The lack of oxygen, or maybe the shock, made his mind wander. He was back in 1984. He was a young man. He was standing in the hospital waiting room. Martha was holding a bundle of blankets. A baby. They had lost that baby 3 days later. A heart defect. It was the only time Silas had ever cried in front of another man. He had cried on the shoulder of his shift foreman, and the next day he had gone back into the mine, because the bills didn't stop for grief. He wondered if that baby was waiting for him now. Somewhere in the dark. "Mr. Thorne." Caleb's shout snapped him back. "What? What is it?" "I heard something." Silas strained his ears. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Then, tap, tap, tap. It was faint, vibrating through the rock itself. "Seismic," Silas whispered. "They're using the seismic locators." "They know where we are?" Caleb asked, hope cracking his voice. "They're looking." "Grab a rock, Caleb. Bang on the roof bolt. 3 times. Pause. 3 times. Caleb grabbed a chunk of slate. He hammered it against the steel bolt drilled into the ceiling above them. Clang. 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 They waited. Top, 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 top. They heard us. Caleb sobbed. "They heard us!" Silas felt a wave of relief so strong it made him dizzy, but he knew the reality. Locating them was one thing. Getting to them was another. They were behind a massive fall. It could take hours to dig through. Maybe days? "Now we wait," Silas said. "Turn off your light, Caleb. Save the battery." "I don't want to be in the dark," the boy whispered. "The dark is just the mountain sleeping," Silas said gently. "It won't hurt you. Save the light." The beam clicked off. The absolute black returned. In the darkness, the mind plays tricks. Silas saw shapes. He saw the face of his father, black with coal dust, smoking a pipe. "You stuck. See?" his father seemed to ask. "Yeah, Pop. Stuck good. Well, you know the drill. Keep your head. Don't let the fear in." Silas gripped his own hand. He squeezed until his knuckles popped. "Tell me about your girl," Silas said into the dark, needing to hear a voice. "What?" Caleb asked. "You got a girl? I saw you texting in the parking lot." "Yeah," Caleb said. "Sarah. She works at the diner. She prettiest. The prettiest. She wants to move to Lexington. Go to nursing school. You should take her," Silas said. "You get out of here! You take her! Don't you stay in this hole, Caleb. You hear me?" "I hear you. This life. It takes everything," Silas murmured. "It takes your back. It takes your breath. Don't let it take your future." Hours passed. The air grew stale. It was getting harder to breathe. The CO2 was building up. Silas felt his head throbbing. He felt sleepy. That was the danger. The long sleep. "Caleb?" No answer. "Caleb." "Huh." The boy sounded drunk. Bad sign. "Pop your rescuer," Silas ordered. "Now." He heard the snap of the metal case. The hiss of the chemical reaction. Caleb was breathing the oxygen now. Silas reached for his own. He touched the metal case. He hesitated. He calculated. They were in a small pocket. Caleb was panicking, breathing fast. He would burn through his 60 minutes in 30. If the rescue team took 2 hours, Caleb wouldn't make it. Silas looked at his own unit. He thought about Martha. He thought about the ocean. He thought about the baby he lost. He thought about Caleb's girl, Sarah, waiting for him to take her to Lexington. Silas left his rescuer on his belt. "You doing okay over there?" Silas asked, his voice slurring slightly. "It's hot," Caleb mumbled through the mouthpiece. "The air is hot." "That means it's working," Silas said. He leaned his head back. The darkness wasn't scary anymore. It was soft. Velvet. He focused on his breathing. Shallow. Slow. Conserving. He decided to tell Caleb a story, even if the boy couldn't hear him well. "You know ... double quotes." Silas wheezed. "My daddy mined this coal with a pick and shovel. No machines. Just muscle." He paused. The blackness swirled. "He used to say, 'The coal is just sunlight that got trapped.' Millions of years ago. We ain't miners, Caleb. We're harvesting the sun." Silas smiled. It was a nice thought. Harvesting the sun in the dark. His eyes grew heavy. The pain in his leg faded to a dull throb. He heard a sound, a grinding, mechanical roar. It sounded like a dragon, or adril. It was getting louder. Vibration shook the floor. Dust fell from the ceiling. "Mr. Thorne." Caleb's voice was muffled but urgent. "The wall. Look at the wall!" Silas forced his eyes open. He turned on his light, ignoring the battery. The wall of rubble at the end of their pocket was shifting. A steel rod punched through. Then a drill bit. The roar of machinery was deafening now. Voices, shouting, "Hold on! We're coming through." It was the most beautiful sound Silas had ever heard. Men in heavy gear, faces covered in masks, started pulling rocks away. A gap opened, a beam of light, brighter than heaven, cut into their tomb. "ICM," a rescuer shouted. "2 souls, alive!" Hands reached in, strong hands. Gloves. They grabbed Caleb first. They dragged him through the hole. "Wait!" Caleb screamed, pulling his mask off. "Getsie! His leg is pinned. We got him, son. We got him." Silas felt hands on his shoulders. He felt a jack being placed under the slab on his leg. Crank. Crank. The weight lifted. The blood rushed back into his leg. A fire of agony. Silas screamed. "Easy, old-timer. We gotcha." They pulled him out, dragging him over the rubble, through the dust, toward the fresh air intake. The wind hit his face. Cold, clean air. It tasted like sweet water. They loaded him onto a stretcher. The ride out was a blur of lights and voices. When the cage surfaced, the sun was down. It was night, but the scene was bright. Floodlights, ambulances, and people. Hundreds of people. The whole town was at the fence. As they carried Silas toward the ambulance, he heard a sound that cut through the chaos. "Silas!" "Martha." She broke through the line. She was running. Her face was streaked with tears. She grabbed his hand as they loaded him in. "I'm here, Martha," Silas whispered. His throat was raw. "I'm here, you stupid old man," she sobbed, kissing his soot-stained forehead. "You stupid, stubborn old man." Silas looked past her. He saw Caleb being loaded into another ambulance. A young girl was running to him. "Sarah." Caleb looked over at Silas. He raised a hand. A thumbs up. Silas nodded. The doors closed. The siren wailed. But this time it was a sound of rescue, not warning. 6 months later, the porch of the house in the hollow was quiet. It was spring now. The dogwoods were blooming. white flowers exploding against the green of the mountain. Silas sat in his rocking chair. A cane rested against his knee. He walked with a limp now, and the damp weather made the metal pins in his leg ache. He wasn't wearing his mining boots. He was wearing sneakers. He took a sip of iced tea. The letter was on the table. A postcard from Lexington. Mr. Thorne, nursing school is hard, but we're making it. I got a job at a warehouse, not a mine. Sarah says, "Hello, thank you for the light." Caleb. Silas smiled. He looked out at the mountain. It still loomed over the town, majestic and indifferent. It still held the coal. It still held the ghosts of the men who hadn't made it out. But it didn't have Silas anymore, and it didn't have Caleb. Martha walked out onto the porch. She was holding a brochure. "You ready to look at these hotels?" she asked. "Myrtle Beach ain't gonna book itself." Silas took her hand. It was still rough, but the coal dust was finally fading from his skin. "Yeah," Silas said. "Let's go see the ocean." He looked at the mountain one last time. "I'm retired," he whispered to the hills. And for the first time in 40 years, the mountain didn't answer back.